I'm not going in the water after a rainstorm for at least probably a week.
The population has just gotten so heavy around this area. Everybody wants to live in Southern California.
Surfing is just big, and people come from all over the world to surf here.
Surfers were just starting to be immortalized by the music and magazines.
And it looked like a gypsy encampment, you know, and we were just, you know, here were the real surfers of the day.
They always thought them as the guys that don't want to work.
A big trip for us was to go up the coast to surf Wind and Sea or Sunset Cliffs.
Highway 101 was like really a thrill.
I never really had much going on until I found the ocean and a surfboard, and that's all she wrote.
Surfing was everything to me. It was the only thing I thought about, the only thing I did, the only thing I dreamt about. It was my whole life.
Yeah, oh yeah, well, yeah, I did surf. I was proud of the fact that I surfed 9 summers without working.
It was just so special. It was a special new thing to do, and we knew that.
I'd just like to see people give a wave to someone else instead of trying to get as many as they can and handing off a little bit.
The beaches are really congested, and I can't even imagine what it'll be like in 20 years.
And we've got to be able to handle, not now, but we've got to be able to think about the future, and so we don't pollute the ocean and the beaches.
The water quality has definitely changed, but let me say it's still a fun thing to do and a fun place to be.
I mean, that's the kind of stuff that this natural progression of the next generation taking on the responsibility to their heart, going, hey, I'm not going to let that happen.
Our ocean has been creating waves millions of years before mankind. It's only been recently, in the last century, that wave riding has become popular. The stories that surfers share with us today about how it was then reminds us that times have changed.
I moved to La Jolla March 1st, 1940, and was fascinated by the beach. I got to know a fellow by the name of Bill Eisenhower, who let me ride his paddleboard down at Little Cove, Little Cove is just south of Big Rock. It comes in next to Big Rock. And so I'd ride that board, and it was exciting. So from then on, I was hooked. That was about late 1940.
My first recollections of surfing was on my dad's lap, looking at his albums when he went to Hawaii in the 1920s, and he had several beautiful postcard photos that really captivated me. That I just couldn't believe that these people could be standing on a piece of wood and riding waves.
The notable people that were along the coast here that I was photographing was Mike Diffenderfer, Rusty Miller, Linda Benson, Mike Doyle. I covered the '66 World Contest at Ocean Beach, and that was for the LA Times. And I remember Nat Young, got some great stuff of Nat Young, and Skip Fry, you know, people like that.
Well, I grew up in Pacific Beach in San Diego, California, so pretty much started right there next to the pier in the summer of '58, and then kind of graduated to the Tourmaline PB Point area. That's where I actually caught my first swell. And I would say that's kind of my home area, more or less.
Well, we started on balsa. That's what we had, and some of them were, you know, really heavy with heavy redwood stringers in them. And you know, I think I can't remember exactly what year the foam started, but we all, of course, went to foam, and they were around anywhere from 8'6" to 9 feet. There was not a lot of women, but there were every county and beach, you know, had their women that did surf, as well as Hawaii, and you know, there were other parts of the world that women did surf.
I think in Cardiff, Georgia's, right across from Los Olas there, was when I first actually rode my first waves at, I think, age 5 or so. My dad shaped me these beautiful round board single fins and pushed me into waves, and all of a sudden I was looking back at him and he was screaming, "You're trimming!" But I didn't know what he meant. I was just going along, you know, I was going right. It was the best feeling though, and then I did it again and again and again.
Actually, surfers were kind of in the disfavor of the general public. You know, they thought they were deadbeats and troublemakers, and a little bit probably of both. But as you know, they've become well-to-do and every field, is medicine or whatever.
I think the most obvious difference was that lack of people. If you wanted a surfing buddy, you literally usually would call up some friends and say, "Hey, meet me at such and such a place and we'll go surfing." Nowadays it's like, gosh, where do you think we can surf where there isn't anybody around?
Well, when I started surfing, surfing was a very rebellious sport. It was done by long-haired, hippie, drug-dealing, wild characters, and that's what I was really attracted to. It ended up saving me in that the surfing kept me so focused that it kept me out of the drug scene and motivated me to travel and to see the world, and it eventually turned into a career through photography. My primary interest in photography is surfing, and the photography facilitated my surfing career.
So sometimes Seaside would have problems. They had a little tourist camp down there, and people would go out, and I'd spot them, and it'd be a riptide, so I jumped in my 32 Ford Fate, it was a hot rod, and threw the torpedo buoys in the back, and rode down the beach, and everybody knew I was the lifeguard. The highway patrol knew I was a lifeguard, and it was okay for the lifeguard to take his car on the beach and go after somebody and, you know, and patrol the beach.
It was just a lot of characters, and people didn't know what to think. Probably a lot of rowdy people, and it wasn't as accepted as it is now. Now you have doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs, women, girls, little kids. I mean, the sport encompasses everybody now, where then it was just like a fringe maverick group of ocean people.
They always thought them as guys that don't want to work. They don't want to work, and they're lazy. And during World War II, you know, they said they should be helping the war effort. They should be working in an aircraft factory or some kind of factory. And anyway, I knew one fellow that was working in an aircraft factory. His name's Bob Card, and he faked it with a cast. He got a doctor to put a cast on his leg so he could get off work to go surfing.
They weren't sure what to think of us because it was such a different, new thing to do. I think they thought we were a little different, and we were. It was just so special. It was a special, new thing to do, and we knew that.
They really didn't know too much about the surfers and the lifestyle of the beach, and it wasn't until the Hollywood people got the surf blanket bingo and stuff like that going that surfing began to get popular, and it was on TV, and the Beach Boys came out, and you know, the whole thing started to change. More people coming to the beach.
Oh, I've had a great life growing up, you know. My younger years you can remember the most, you know. They were always good, you know. You can always look back. But even today, I had a good session out, you know. So, as far as memorable type situations or people and stuff, just my youth.
Well, I surfed with a small group of friends, and a big trip for us was to go up the coast to surf Wind and Sea or Sunset Cliffs. But we were pretty happy in Imperial Beach because the waves are very good there. There's a lot of variety. It's a year-round spot. The Tijuana Saloons, which is kind of a secret still, it provided us with a lot of big wave experiences that a lot of people didn't have. So we were pretty content there most of the time. I mean, we were still trying to learn to do a bottom turn. I mean, traveling wasn't so important to us.
Surfing was, for me anyway, and for a lot of the people I hung out with, surfing was the main thing. You know, we did other things, but surfing was my life. You know, I lived and breathed it. You know, it was like I said in a little magazine article, it was almost religious to me, you know.
Our era will never be repeated, for sure, as maybe the same era in the 1920s and 30s in Hawaii. It's gone.
Yeah, it was in your blood. It's in your blood, the surf and the atmosphere and the buddies you have, and it all ties together in a knot of, as Don Oakey would say, you know, Woody, he says, we only have so many summers left. So we, even in those days, we'd say, well, you know, you got to take advantage of it.
There wasn't much in my life besides surfing. I was focused. The only other diversion was chasing girls on Friday nights, but you know, we played a little badminton here and there, but that was only to meet girls. And you know, surfing was everything to me. It was the only thing I thought about, the only thing I did, the only thing I dreamt about. It was my whole life, basically.
There were just some wonderful days of summer, glassy, good surf, and they would put Tahitian music on the loudspeakers. And, you know, it was paradise. It was just paradise.
You know, and it's just, the ocean is just such a healthy environment when it's left in its natural state. I mean, there again, we got to go back to keeping it clean.
In today's society, the choices we make will unavoidably affect the future. Can our infrastructure support the expanding needs of a city growing at an alarming rate while preserving our natural environment? Today, surfers are on the front line of coastal awareness. In speaking with these keepers of the coast, we might have something to learn from their perspective.
Almost like overnight, the exploitation of the land and the beach areas went so fast that we could hardly believe it.
It's really been polluted too much. Wind and Sea there, you know, they have a drain line that used to come down that canyon. And as we build communities, more and more street runoff is going to the beach. And let's face it, every automobile, or at least every other one, has an oil leak of some kind.
There's very little public knowledge of what goes in the ocean. What you don't see, you don't worry about. But for the last 30-plus years, as the population increased, there's hundreds of outfalls. There's some right here in Cardiff.
And I think we have totally neglected what has been a problem that I remember since my childhood, and that is the contaminated water situation in the bays and harbors. And I know at one point the Navy was much to blame in National City because they had a whole mothball fleet there that, of course, produced a lot of stress in the waters there, both from inorganic and organic elements that I'm sure are there in the sediment to this day.
I mean, it's just astounding that the neglect continues and people tolerate. You know, you hear about a massive sewage spill on the news, and then, you know, an instant later, the newscaster is smiling about some happy story, and it goes ignored. I mean, I think we really need to pay attention to those. And, you know, we need to encourage people like Donna Fry, who seems out on her own, you know, and get behind her and help people like her and the Surfrider and other people do what needs to be done. We need to become politically active, too. You know, it's very important. People need to vote. They need to vote in people that are at least somewhat interested and concerned.
I think that politicians will change and will start taking the clean water issues more seriously when the surfing community flexes its muscle a whole lot more than it has been, and when they get a lot more involved in voting. Unfortunately, if you don't vote, the people that get into office you have no control over. And I know that politics is sort of a unattractive nuisance for a lot of people, but the thing is that's the people that are making the decisions. Those are the people that are determining where the money's going to go, how it's going to get spent, what laws will be enforced. And so if we don't participate in that basic process, we can scream and holler all we want. It's not going to make a huge difference unless we file lawsuits. And I mean, certainly that's another recourse, but that's expensive. That gets very expensive and time-consuming. You couldn't file enough lawsuits, let's put it that way.
It boggles my mind, as many things do, that the city of San Diego would elect to spend $400 million on a baseball park and not protect the ocean. There is absolutely no logic in that. There's no sense. You know, baseball is a private industry. The community of San Diego is a public thing. Why put a private interest ahead of a public issue? I mean, it just astounds me how people just refuse to deal with the issues at hand.
We need to, as surfers, start getting together and making our voice more of a powerhouse, to remind our politicians, especially in North County, that surfers are what make going to the beach a cool thing. When your family comes out from Kansas or Iowa, they come out to see surfers. They've seen the Gidget movies. They've seen the bigger movies, In God's Hands, North Shore. They've seen these movies that glamorize Point Break. They glorify surfing and the surfing lifestyle since the 50s. All throughout North County, we've lived that for the last 40, 50 years. Surfing's heyday included North County beaches, and now there's a threat to that. That could be compromised.
If there's any message out there, especially for the politicians, man, that's our #1 asset is our water environment. And our #1 priority is to keep that from getting any worse and hopefully to get better. If it gets any worse, we won't be able to go in. That's the bottom line. It'll be such a health risk. I mean, just picture that. San Diego or Southern California not being able to go in the ocean, and it's right on the border of that right now.
Our coastal environment is in obvious peril, and our elected officials are placing the health of our ocean and those who swim in it as even a lower priority than a baseball stadium. The urgency to vote in council people whose reverence for our natural resources is such that will allow marine life to flourish, as well as allowing our children and generations to come to enjoy the shoreline. The ramifications of beachgoers being human guinea pigs hasn't yet been realized. With an influx of 1 million people expected to add to our current population in the next 20 years, something needs to be done now.
If there's any one thing we could do is talk to people on condense your families down a little bit, you know. 2's pretty good. You don't need to get any bigger than that. I mean, we're running out of room. I mean, you can be on the freeway. And the last 2 years on the freeway just amazed me, like traveling, and you just look for miles and miles, and here's bumper to bumper, 25-mile-an-hour traffic at the most. For miles, I mean, as far as you can see. And that right there, I mean, and then we're in the energy crisis right now, where you know, the prices have went up, and they talked about yesterday about rolling blackouts and they're still building. Hey, put on the brakes. You know, we're saturated. Let's get all this taken care of before we build more and more and more.
Well, the growth is out of control. It's really, let's not call it growth. Let's call it what it really is, which is overpopulation. One of my friends said to me, he says, why do they call a people surplus a housing shortage? It's really a good point. And the thing is that as we continue to cram more and more and more people into smaller and smaller and smaller pieces of the land and also the ocean and the bay, people get real hostile. And I think you can see that at some of the beaches where you're out paddling and there's one wave and there's, you know, 50 guys trying to get it.
I think what is starting to change is some of the mentality that some of the surfers are beginning to understand the effects of the environment on them, but their consciousness still hasn't gone far enough to say, hey, no, I can't go out there or talk to everybody, okay, we better not go out here, because for some reason that wave is just really irresistible, even if the wave is brown.
I mean, a while ago, I remember in the early 80s, we had a couple of really big swells, and it was the first time that there was a big public announcement, you know, and they actually banned surfers from surfing for almost a month and a half anywhere in Del Mar, and I think other beaches too, but then I didn't have a car, so I wasn't really going around. And it was because there was hepatitis, you know. They said there was hepatitis in the ocean and no one's allowed, and the lifeguards would block you, and the waves were, it was raining all the time, and the waves looked perfect, and we weren't allowed to go out. And it seemed like after that, it happened more often and more often and more often and more often. And up to that point, it had never been broadcasted maybe, but, you know, I've had many ear infections and sinus infections, but they're low grade too, but they're things that are more than just water in your sinuses, you know. It's where you feel ill afterwards, and you want to take a shower, and you want to rinse your mouth with peroxide or, you know, alcohol and eardrops in your ears just to be precautionary.
Certainly one thing that I've noticed over the past 20 years or so of taking care of patients is that more and more frequently patients are coming in to see me with problems related to their exposure to the ocean environment. And this is particularly true after we've had big storms in the winter when there's a lot of outfall, and certainly you've seen lots of pictures of the way we have water that goes right into the ocean, our local oceans, that tends to pollute the environments. We tend to take care of surfers here on a regular basis, and the most common problems that they run into are usually related to upper respiratory tract infections, ear infections, occasionally bronchial infections, sinus infections, that type of thing. Most of these are just due to the proliferation of bacteria that are in the water. Occasionally we'll see human contamination from E. coli, which is what we test for when we test to see if the waters are clean and to make decisions about closing beaches. Those are tests for coliform bacteria. But the most common bacteria are bacteria that are normally found in the marine environment that just proliferate when they are exposed to human waste and pollution and that type of thing.
I've never gotten sick from surfing, but it's been a gradual thing. And if we came right from the 50s to the water today, you know, our immune system probably is not built up like it is, and you know, maybe it's a whole different story. But I'm fearful for what's ahead for the surfers and the people that get in the water. I know that California had 182 beaches reporting pollution in 1999, and every one of them reported either a unsafe or a warning. All 182 beaches had at least one reporting of unsafe or polluted waters.
I notice, because of the increased monitoring, more and more closures. I notice closures on a level that should shock everybody, but nobody seems to pay attention, which boggles my mind. And I think that the fine that was levied against Oceanside for a sewage spill recently should have been done years ago, and I think they should be million-dollar fines. It should become an economic disaster when there's a sewage spill, and somewhere along the line, the city council will realize that it's cheaper to fix the sewage pipes than just discount the spills. But I'm all for major fines for the cities, and I love that that's the new trend. They would rather sweep this problem under the carpet because it damages tourism. And I think it would be wonderful if we had multi-million-dollar to do a massive ad campaign to tell all the tourists exactly what they're planning to swim in. I think then we might get some reaction.
What we need to do in the city of San Diego is we need to have a long-range plan and look at the way we dispose of water treated from runoff, from human waste and so forth, and we have to have a master plan that doesn't just dump these things into the ocean. That's a very old-fashioned way to do it, and that's the way we would expect it to be done in a third world or a developing country. That's not the way we'd expect to manage these problems in the United States, given the resources that we have at our disposal. I don't think it's a matter of can we afford to do it. It's a matter of we cannot afford to not do it. So it's something that we have to put our attention and resources to, and it's an investment in the future.
The kids are the ones that are going to make the next movement, you know, and that's just how it always is. What I know is something that's second nature to me, my parents didn't know, and again, my younger sister and my daughter are going to be like, come on, Dad, get with it. Yeah.
So my message for the future is that we are winning. And we're going to change it. And of course, instead of probably putting baseball stadiums in, we should probably put billions of dollars into new sewage systems, better, all of our pipes and things that we put in for water and sewage need to be replaced immediately.
The thing that I think that I miss the most about San Diego, the thing that I loved was, when I was growing up, was just that sensation of diving into the ocean, you know, and being in the water and feeling it and tasting it and not worrying about anything, just being in the ocean. It was a tremendous thing, and that's the thing I really worry. You know, we've sort of lost our virginity, and now every time you're about to drive in the ocean, you have to stop and consider whether it's polluted or not. I mean, that's just warped. I would love it if we could get back to that point where we just dive in the ocean and take a gulp and don't worry about it.
The surfing to me has just been such a gift. And I really want to be able to surf for a long time. And I guess I would just ask people to think twice. In their homes, you know, all the runoff goes to the ocean. Just think twice so we can stay a little longer and have it a little cleaner.
I don't know, I just love the sport of surfing and hope that I'm able to do it into my 80s or beyond. And I don't know, it's real scary right now with the way the environment's going, the way we're building without any thought for just what's going to happen downstream and in our oceans and bays.